Dragon SpaceX contract.
SpaceX Dragon, readable.
Copy. We have you the same. Stand by. We're still configuring for ground station contract.
Dragon copy. And just to further explain some of those voice protocols that you're going to hear, you might be used to hearing Houston Station or Houston Shuttle or Houston Endeavor back when we were flying those specific shuttles. You're going to hear SpaceX Dragon. That's the SpaceX team calling the Dragon team on orbit. And then Bob and Doug will be able to respond. So they're going to continue to configure. We'll get these ground station checkouts momentarily. And just a reminder, you're going to hear that very unique beeping sound that's called a quindar, and that's been something that's been used throughout space-to-ground or air-to-ground communications throughout spaceflight history, and that's really just for teams who are in mission control or supporting a launch know when you hear that sound, it's time to listen.
Dragon SpaceX contract ground station.
Dragon has your loud and clear, much better, Jim.
And core loud and clear, ground station contract complete, stand by for TDRS contract. Dragon SpaceX contract TDRS.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core loud and clear, TDRS contract complete, stand by for checks with MD, LD, and the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, com check.
Jason, we've got you loud and clear. How you doing?
Doing great. How you guys doing in there? Stand by for com checks.
Ready to launch a spaceship.
Agree. And stand by for com checks over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, com check.
Loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for com checks with LD.
Dragon, launch director on countdown 1, com check.
Mike, we've got you loud and clear. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let me try on Dragon to ground 1.
Okay.
Dragon, SpaceX launch director on Dragon to ground 1, com check.
Is this chicken salad with bread and butter pickles? It's
Have you the
ham
same?
salad. Okay. Ham.
Dragon SpaceX, launch configuration contracts are complete. Report when ready for seat rotation for section 2 of 4.100.
Did you get this on here for me? Yeah.
SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for seat rotation.
I can put my earbud. You can share it on your Facebook page and tell everyone to
report
join
when
in.
initiating.
Hang on, I'll show you how to do it.
All right, so that wraps up those communications checks. Everything going good with the spacecraft. Bob and Doug talking to the teams on the ground. Pretty soon they're going to get their seats rotated. Bringing you back inside Hawthorne real quick, I do want to thank Jessica and Lars for joining me real quick, giving us that great insight into Dragon and Falcon 9. Hope you guys got a good spot staked out to watch a launch today. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely.
All right.
Excited.
So we're going to throw it now down to Gary Jordan at Mission Control Houston, who I know is also following along. Over to you, Gary.
Put her up.
Thanks, Dan. Great to hear good checks from Bob and Doug in the Dragon vehicle. Here in Mission Control Houston, Flight Director Zeb Scoville has pulled space station flight controllers, and all systems are go for launch. Essentially, the station is prepared for Dragon to arrive 19 hours after launch. Flight controllers here will continue to monitor the countdown, but really it's up to the teams in Kennedy and Hawthorne to get us to liftoff at this point. So we want to hear your comments as we continue to count down to launch, so let's go to the social desk now. Tahira.
Thanks, Gary. So taking a quick look at those numbers right now, there are now 1 million people watching our coverage, and Launch America is up to the #1 trending hashtag on Twitter. So let's take a closer look at what's being said online. Okay, so right now we have Art Alexandria, and it looks like she's got a personal self-portrait, cosmic for sure, in her NASA flight suit. And guys, this is what I'm loving seeing online with this hashtag, is how everyone around the nation is making this launch uniquely theirs. And I want to point out one line in her post that says, "I believe that no matter how far the future is, we are on our way towards it." And guys, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's what today represents. Let's take another look. Oh my goodness. Okay, so right now we have Jessica with her space pup getting ready for liftoff. And guys, I'm not gonna lie, we love to see it. So please, if you have any space pets, comment using hashtag LaunchAmerica. As you can see, everybody is thrilled to be a part of this launch today, and I know of one special guest in particular. I'm so pleased to welcome Diana Cohort of Physics Girl. Diana, I hear you have a burning question for Mission Control, so go for it.
Hi, Tahira. Thank you so much for including me on this incredibly special day. I'm Diana from the YouTube channel Physics Girl, and I've always been so fascinated by space and especially space exploration because we bring together so many people for such a complicated task to send a rocket up into space. So my question is along the lines of what goes into a mission like that? What we all know, I think we're familiar with how much preparation and training astronauts have to do, but preparing for a mission like this, and maybe preparing in the future for a mission to the moon or to Mars, what kinds of things does the whole team have to do in order to prepare to launch a rocket?
So Diana, that is such a great question because, I mean, sometimes I think it does get overlooked what all goes into making a moment like this happen. So Gary, what has the team there in Mission Control been doing to prepare for this historic launch?
Come here and see. Come do it.
Thanks, Tahira. And Diana, that's a fantastic question. Really, the operations here are not just starting today. There has been a lot of training and a lot of simulations that have been going into preparing for this moment. Really preparing and getting everyone familiarized with every step of the mission, from launch all the way through docking, and throwing different scenarios at them just in case something were to happen. Every flight controller you see behind me will be prepared to respond effectively. Now, I do want to make a shout out that it's not just the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston that have dedicated so much time to this launch. In fact, I've been talking to Zeb Scoville, the flight director here in Mission Control Houston, who said that even before he was a flight director, back in 2014, they were working on some of the operations for commercial crew missions. But really, this team expands across the country. You've already seen a lot of people working in Hawthorne, in Florida, in Houston, and really it takes an integrated and dedicated team to make a mission like this possible. Diana, thank you so much for the question. And really thanks to everyone sending in questions and for sharing in this historic mission today. Remember, as you're posting, to use the hashtag LaunchAmerica. I do want to make a shout out to the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston. In fact, some traditional flowers have been sent to Mission Control Houston. This dates even back before the shuttle days for every mission to dedicate it to the operations and the controllers here who are working so closely and are integrated in every part of the mission. But now let's head over to Hawthorne for the latest status on the crew and on Drgon. Dan.
Is that it?
All right, thank you, Gary. As you can see, Bob and Doug in a little bit different position now. Their suits have been rotated to the launch position. So this just puts their backs a little bit more horizontal with the ground itself, or parallel with the ground itself, and places those displays directly in front of them. We've also already moved into suit leak checks, so this is the second time they've had these leak checks done in their suit. So pressurized nitrox now flowing into those launch and entry suits that they're going to be wearing throughout the dynamic phases of this mission. So right now we are under 2 hours and 20 minutes from launch. We're about 2 hours and 18 minutes and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's going to be carrying our NASA crew members today, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, aboard SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. It's been a really exciting day so far. We're fighting against that weather, but we're continuing to press on for launch. The crew has been up since about 6 a.m. as they prepare to head to the International Space Station for part of this Demo 2 mission for NASA.
Yeah, and as you can see on your screen, it looks like they're just waiting and getting ready for this mission today. It's been such an exciting day so far. Again, as Dan said, their seats are rotated into launch position so that they can see those screens that you see there on the left side right in front of them. Their suit leak checks have been complete. Their comm checks are complete. So let's throw it over to Lauren in KSC.
All right, so Dragon hatch close is expected at T-1 hour and 55 minutes, and we are just pretty close to that. It's getting really, really close. So this is one of the the final key visual milestones on that timeline to lift off, the closure of that hatch and locking Bob and Doug inside. Now, we have a couple of special guests joining us with Daryl at the OSB-2 viewing location. That's NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and SpaceX Chief Engineer Elon Musk. Daryl?
That's right, Lauren. We're here on the 5th floor. We were supposed to be outside on the balcony overlooking pad 39A, but we have come indoors due to the weather. But we are here with two titans of space. And though it might look like this is a reunion of a 90s boy band, it is not. We are socially distanced for good reason. But we are here to talk about space. And I want to thank you both and tell you both it's a privilege and honor to be with you today. We're going to start off with you, Jim, and ask you a couple questions here. I want to ask you first. It's been almost 3 years that you were sworn in as NASA Administrator, and you knew from the very first day that you would be right here at the Kennedy Space Center in this moment when a commercial partner was ready to launch. Tell me what it's like to be leading NASA at this very moment.
So I want to hear. I did not know that when I got sworn in. I will tell you. A lot of folks said it couldn't be done, but of course, as soon as I got the job, Elon and I have had a number of conversations. Elon committed that this was something that SpaceX could achieve. We've had challenges, we've had setbacks. We've seen catastrophic losses of capsules and challenges with parachutes. What's that? On the ground, uncrewed, I want to be really clear. Tests, but that's what's unique about SpaceX. SpaceX can do things that NASA historically has not done. They test, they fail, they fix, they fly, they test, they fail, they fix, they fly, until the point where we are today, where not only is SpaceX comfortable, but NASA is comfortable. We are ready to go. But if you would have told me even 2 years ago we'd be right here, I might have even been questioning it then. But this is a monumental achievement. It's a Herculean task by the SpaceX team, which we're very grateful for, and also by the NASA team that has been working hand in glove with them to get to this point.
And it's good we have Jim and Elon both here to fact check each other, so that's good. Thank you for that. Elon, in 2002, when you started SpaceX, many in the aerospace industry didn't take SpaceX seriously. You remember what that felt like. Yet here you are, you just sent 2 astronauts in a car made by your car company to launch pad 39A with a spacecraft made by your space company. And now they're launching the International Space Station. So I'm wondering for you, in this moment, do you just pinch yourself thinking, is this really happening?
This is a dream come true, I think, for me and everyone at SpaceX. This is not something that I ever thought would actually happen. So when starting SpaceX in 2002, I really did not think this day would occur. I expected 90% chance we'd fail to even get to low Earth orbit with a small rocket. So somebody told me in 2002 that I'd be standing here with the NASA administrator, meeting the astronauts, and we've got a rocket and spacecraft on pad 39A, the best pad in the world, which is it's an honor to be there. I would have thought, man, I don't know what you're smoking, but it's not. like no way is that true. And so it is. Say it's even a dream come true. I didn't even dream that this would come true. Let it go that way. But it is. I am incredibly excited to be here on behalf of the SpaceX team. As Jim said, this really is the culmination of an incredible amount of work by the SpaceX team, by NASA, and by a number of other partners in the process of making this happen. It's really, you can look at this as the result of 100,000 people, roughly, when you add up all suppliers and everyone working incredibly hard to make this day happen. So it's really hard to believe that this is real.
And you're here, and it's amazing, and many of us have been amazed as we've watched you accomplish these things over the years. Jim, back to you. This is all about the commercialization of space. And so in the early going for commercial crew program, it wasn't something NASA was used to. Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Shuttle, NASA gave the designs and the contractors went out there and built it. This is different.
It is.
They're building it now. What were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome to get to this point?
Well, I think getting people to recognize that when the government provides both the demand and the supply, you're limited in what you're able to do. And of course, back when this program was initiated under Charlie Bolden, General Charlie Bolden, astronaut Charlie Bolden, Congress was not supportive and did not provide the proper funding. And yet he persevered. He pushed forward. And now I think everybody recognizes we have to commercialize space. We've had success now with commercial resupply of the International Space Station. Now we've got commercial crew to the International Space Station. Eventually we need commercial space stations. So what we're using the International Space Station for right now, we're proving that we can compound pharmaceuticals in a way that you cannot do on Earth. We're able to create immunizations in a way you cannot do on Earth. We're printing human organs in 3D. Right now it's just tissue, but eventually we're going to print human organs in 3D using adult stem cells, your skin cells, your own DNA. It's going to transform how we do medicine here on Earth. We're creating advanced materials that you can only create in the microgravity of space, things like an artificial retina for the human eye. So if you have macular degeneration, you don't have to lose your eyesight. Bottom line is this: these markets are the future. And when they materialize, and they are materializing because of the work of NASA, we're going to see capital investment, not just into launch, but also into habitation. And that ultimately is what's going to be transformational for commercial space.
Very good. And Elon, in getting all of that going, the ISS and all the activity that takes place on board, it's key that this Crew Dragon operate on a regular basis. As the chief engineer, what were some of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome to get your spacecraft ready to fly this mission?
Well, the spacecraft and the rocket have gone through literally thousands and thousands of tests and reviews, both by SpaceX, by NASA, by third parties. We've also, as Jim was alluding to, we've done a lot of flights. So one of the things I think that's very helpful about this flight, about what we're about to do, is that the rocket has flown many times. In fact, even in this, essentially this configuration, it's flown about 20 times. So that means we really have, I don't want to tempt fate, but a well-proven rocket. And we've flown Crew Dragon to the space station once, successfully brought it back. We've done tremendous amount of testing on the ground, and when we do the testing on the ground, you always push the limits. So you want to try, you push it way beyond what you'd expect in flight. So sometimes you So this is a result, like I said, of thousands of tests, of thousands of design hours, and a tremendous number of smart people working incredibly hard to make this day happen.
And you've got 2 astronauts on board now.
Yes.
Do you feel that responsibility?
Yes, absolutely. I felt it, I think, most strongly when I saw their family just before coming here.
And did you say anything that you can share?
So we've done everything we can to make sure your dad's come back okay.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Jim, you had some words with the astronauts. What was your take on how they were feeling?
I will tell you, Doug Hurley, Marine Corps test pilot, of course, veteran of multiple Space Shuttle missions. Bob Benkin, flight test engineer, United States Air Force, again, veteran of multiple Space Shuttle missions. This is not new to these guys. All I could do is convey to them how much all of America appreciates what they're doing, that the entire world is watching, and just how grateful we are as a nation. And I will tell you, their demeanor is loose. They are ready to go. They were joking around. They were talking about what they had for breakfast and how it might come up later. It was
Steak and eggs. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. So it was nice to see they are in their element, and we are just so grateful and proud of them.
Well, that's good to hear. That gives you great confidence, I'm sure, in your positions as you hear that. We're going to go to a social media question, and we've got this question coming from Brooklyn. And she wants to know, I noticed some changes in the crew spacesuits. They look much thinner and lighter. What changes in the space capsule allow to have these futuristic suits?
Well, we spent a lot of time designing the spacesuit. I personally spent a lot of time on the spacesuits. It took us 3, almost 4 years to design suits that both look good and work well. So you can see a spacesuit in the movie looks good, doesn't work, and then you can make a spacesuit that works but then doesn't look good, because fundamentally it's a pressure suit that's got to survive in vacuum.
Right.
So it's so it tends to puff up, when it's under pressure, and it's got to handle all that pressure. So it took us many iterations to get the suit to. We really wanted to look great. Fundamentally, what it's about is like we want to inspire kids to say that one day they want to wear that uniform. They want to wear that spacesuit, and get them fired up about. Yeah, I want to be an astronaut. I want to work on aerospace engineering. I want to advance space flight. And I think what today is about is reigniting the dream of space, and getting people fired up about the future and excited. It's just one of those things that I think everyone. From all walks of life, from all parts of the political spectrum, in the United States and elsewhere, should be really excited that this is a thing that is made by humans, for humans, and it's just a great, exciting, inspiring day, and it's one of those things that makes you glad to wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Functional and inspiring. And there's one on a model right over there, and you got me so excited. I might run over there and put that thing on, Elon.
Yeah. They're custom tailored, by the way.
Oh, they are.
I think you won't fit in that one, but we could make one that you would fit in.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, because I'm 6'8", so you're gonna have to do a lot of sewing.
Well, and the Dragon spacecraft can take someone who's 6'8".
My size.
Yes.
This commercial thing, I'm getting excited.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm ready to fly, Jim.
Yeah.
Sir. We've got another social media question we're going to ask. Ashton J wants to know, how do you think that launching astronauts on American soil for the first time since 2011 will revolutionize future missions?
Yeah, so what we're doing here is unlike anything we've ever done before. We are not purchasing, owning, and operating the hardware. We are turning to commercial industry. And going back to the spacesuits, it's the same for the capsule, it's the same for the rocket. We did not tell industry what to build. We gave them top-level requirements. We said, here's the requirement for payload, here's the requirements for safety. And then we let the innovators, commercial industry, American commercial industry, innovate. And they came up with solutions that had never been dreamed of before. And that's the success of this program. So we're really revolutionizing how we do spaceflight. And I really think when we look into the future, we're going to see these models of doing business with public-private partnerships apply not just to low Earth orbit, which is what we're doing today, but we're taking this model to the moon and even onto Mars.
And I hear something about Tom Cruise shooting a movie at the International Space Station. Is that right?
I'll tell you what I told Elon just yesterday, and that is this. People ask me about Tom Cruise all the time now, and the answer is yes. We would love Tom Cruise to fly to the International Space Station and make a movie. I'm all for that, and we're going to do what we can to make that happen. But you should know this. There was a day when I was in elementary school, and I saw the movie Top Gun. And from that day, I knew that I was going to be a Navy pilot. It's just the way it was. The goal here, and this is what we're doing today.
Exactly.
And Elon is all about this.
Get the kids fired up about wanting to wear that spacesuit, wanting to fly that, go to orbit, go to the moon, go to Mars, reigniting the dream of space, and just getting, people of all walks of life, young, old, excited about the future. Excited. I think anyone who has within them the spirit of exploration should love what's going on today.
And if we can get Tom Cruise to inspire an elementary kid to join the Navy and be a pilot, why can't we get Tom Cruise to inspire the next Elon Musk? That's what we need. We need a new generation of many Elon Musks, and that's what this launch is about today. I want to say, speaking of this inspiration piece, it's not by chance that we have the Secretary of Education of the United States of America here. This is all about the next generation. If we have great success in our generation, it's not enough. It has to continue. The challenge with the Apollo program is that it ended. What we're doing now is sustainable, and that's why we have the public-private partnerships and commercial capabilities that are coming online.
Very good. And the good news for Tom Cruise is he does a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah.
So in zero
Absolutely.
gravity, he should get hurt a lot
No,
less,
I think it's going to be super cool.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
as Joe said, it's like this is going to, you know, you want to capture the public imagination, have them see cool things happening in real orbit, you know, real space stations. It's like I think I'd want to watch that movie. You know. Yeah. And it's like like I said, I think this is really just the beginning, because we want to go from low Earth orbit. We want to go back to the moon, and the moon to stay. Have a moon base like Moon Base Alpha, and have build a city on Mars and be a spacefaring civilization out there among the stars. This is a super exciting future that I think that's the kind of thing where you're like, yeah, can't wait for it to happen. You know.
If you can't get excited after listening to you guys, I'd say you need to have your pulse checked.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, SpaceX CEO and Chief Engineer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim Bridenstine, we appreciate you leading NASA in this time, administrator for the agency. And we're going to send it back to Marie.
All right, thanks a lot, Daryl. We saw in the meantime, while that interview was going on, the hatch actually closed. So that happened a few minutes earlier than we expected to. Our timeline has that happening at T-minus an hour and 55 minutes. So a few minutes ahead of schedule right now with hatch close. And you can see the pad teams, they're just working on things now.
Yeah, right now it looks like what they're doing is, what are they doing? So they perform a leak check. There's a mechanism there called a side hatch mechanism. That is what actually closes the hatch and seals it. And what we'll do is perform a leak check on that for a few minutes to make sure that that's nice and tight, that those O-rings are sealed really, really well. And after that, we will install the, you can see the leak check ground support equipment there in the technician's hands there.
And while we're watching this, Leland, I mean, we just heard them talk a lot about inspiring the next generation. And you're a man of many talents. I know after your flights yourself, you used to head the head of NASA education. I mean, what did that stir up in?
What Elon said about reigniting the dream of space is so important, that we get our young kids thinking about themselves being in these seats. And when I first became an astronaut in 1998, I was riding on the back of a fire truck celebrating John Glenn's return to flight on a space shuttle. And I saw these two little kids. They had on orange pumpkin suits, and their dad turned them around to look at me on the fire truck. And it was almost as though when they saw my face, they started launching into space with rocket fuel because they were inspired, because they saw someone who looked like them. And I think can reignite this dream through SpaceX's launch, through the partnership with NASA. We can get so many more kids to believe in themselves and know that they can be just like Doug and Bob flying on the SpaceX Dragon.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just breathtaking to see them there in their suits now and looking at the screens in front of them. Lauren, I know we've talked a lot about the spacecraft. We've heard about that, but for folks that maybe are just tuning in, what are they looking at in front of them now?
Yeah, so they have 3 different touch screens in front of them. Overall, that whole assembly there is called the control panel. So you'll have those 3 LCD touch screens in front of them where they have the displays are showing them details on the vehicle's pressure, its temperature. There's audio control. That center screen has the procedures that they're going through today on day of launch. You can also see the vehicle's attitude. You can see its velocity, its apogee, its perigee, its inclination, details on the status of the hatch, the thermal control system loops, basically all the cool stuff that helps them have situational awareness of the vehicle. That's displayed on those displays. Additionally, there are some actual buttons on that button panel that you see down below. And some of the things that allow them to do is if the crew ever needed to do any sort of manual overrides like that, right in the middle, right underneath that center LCD screen, that's the crew's ability to initiate an abort. It's called an abort handle, and it's right in the middle where both crew members could use it if they needed to. And the audio controls are also on those button panels. When they're not in their suits, there's actually speakers that are coming off of the control panel that allow them to hear mission control, hear the core, hear ISS, when they're not in their suits where the audio systems are integrated into that.
And we see them using the touch screens now. Leland, what's your take on this? Because this has got to look totally different from what you were looking at during shuttle.
touch screens. We had these these displays and these buttons, and it was one of those moments when I'm looking at this now, when I had knee boards that had procedures and things on there, and the procedures are now all run in that middle screen, and the malfunctions and the things that you do to mitigate problems with the vehicle if something happens, it's all controlled right there with the two of them. And so it's a radical departure from what we did with the shuttle, but it's again ushering in this new era of space travel.
For post-ingress brief and a check on how that suit air feels about now.
And we're going to listen now for an announcement about hatch closer.
They're closing the hatch.
Copy. Well, today we are not tracking any issues on Dragon and F9 currently. For a weather update, the weather line that is overhead, which is what you saw when you were ingressing, is now moving offshore. The next radar return is a cell over Orlando, which is expected to be our decision gate for today, and that is currently eroding.
That's good news. Thank you.
Copy. And then one additional item, the Cabo, the orbit site, remains as briefed, so no change there. But I do want to make you aware that that is slightly west of Cabo for go weather. So you just want to target the longitude if needed.
Okay, Dragon copy, slightly west. We'll target the longitude, and the suit air has cooled off, so we appreciate that as well.
Copy, outstanding. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll keep you posted as the closeout team completes the leak check.
They're doing leak check right now.
Dragon copy.
So what we actually heard was a little bit more discussion about the weather, still looking at things, and we're about a minute away from an announcement about hatch closure. Excuse me. If you're just joining us, we're at T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes and counting, and we're expecting an announcement to confirm hatch closure in just a few seconds.
T-minus 1 hour to launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, for comm checks with Falcon 9.
Go ahead.
Okay, we are ready for that at that time, if you are ready.
We are ready.
They are closing the hatch.
Stations up on countdown net for section 54.49. F9 responsible engineer communication check with the crew. Start with guidance, navigation, and control.
Dragon, GNC on countdown 1, comm check. GNC, Dragon, loud and clear. GNC, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
Prop, Dragon, loud and clear.
Prop, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics, Dragon, we have good loud and clear.
Avionics, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the ground segment engineer.
Dragon, ground segment on countdown 1, comm check. Ground segment, Dragon, loud and clear. Ground segment, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control, Dragon, loud and clear.
Launch control loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer. Dragon, chief engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
Fala, Dragon has you loud and clear.
Chief Engineer, loud and clear. This completes the F9 responsible engineered comm checks. Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to ground. Go ahead, sir. I was just doing a comm check on this loop. Good luck, guys, and buckle in.
Thanks to you and the F9 team, Bala. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bala.
So we just heard a series of comm checks there, and Lauren, I don't know if you want to describe a little bit more about why that's important, and we heard the acronym GNC. They said guidance, navigation, and control really quickly, and then went back to the acronym GNC. Can you kind of explain to folks what that means?
Yeah, the launch chief engineer, Bala, as you heard them thanking him towards the end, initiated a comm check with all of the different subsystems that those engineers that are on console and those operators today, and talking with the crew, making sure that they were able to communicate with them bidirectionally, and just handing that check off from all of the different stations on console today. That was really, really cool. We obviously don't do that when there's a satellite on top of the rocket, so this is the first time for a real flight that we've done that operation. Just very awesome.
And now that the hatch is closed, a lot of the work of this team is done, but I mean they're obviously not finished. They're not ready to leave the white room just yet. You were talking to some folks about what's going on in this room now.
Yeah, that's right. They should be completing the hatch leak check. That's you sort of pressurize that area between, there's two O-rings that are there, and we want to pressurize that area, see if it holds pressure. It's a very, very sensitive test, very high criteria for passing, and so once that leak check is shown to be okay, and that the capsule, or that those O-rings are able to hold pressure, what the team will do is they'll go back into that area, into that access panel, and install what we call the SPEP, which is the side pressure equalization plug. Once that is plugged, you've really closed everything up, and when the crew splashes down, what they'll actually do is pull that plug to equalize pressure across the hatch, so that you don't cause the hatch to buckle due to a pressure, or sorry, the hatch or the capsule, the weldment, any of the vehicle to buckle due to a pressure differential. So they should be adding that plug, and then they'll cover up that side hatch access panel with the TPS panel, or thermal protection system panel, close it up, and that'll make sure it stays safe on ascent.
And now obviously we're looking at a view from the outside, the top of Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon.
We can confirm a good side hatch leak check.
Dragon copies, good leak check.
And we just heard confirmation of a good leak check. If you're just joining us, you're looking at the Falcon 9 rocket with Crew Dragon sitting on top. Inside that capsule on top are NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. And we are inside of 2 hours until liftoff, if the weather holds up. There's another stunning aerial view of the crew access arm extended out towards Crew Dragon. That is the final path that the astronauts took to climb aboard Dragon before they strapped into their seats and the hatch closed. And no doubt Bob and Doug are focused on the mission ahead, but you know, we also heard the administrator and Elon Musk talking about how they've been kind of jovial and joking around. And Leland, you kind of mentioned to me during that segment that that's really important.
It really is, Marie. When we were in the vehicle, after we got to this point when the hatch was closed, we were all going back to those moments of our training, when we were going through, ascent and entry training on the shuttle and just different phases of flight that we would be going through. And we would think about some of our instructors who got us there. In our crew notebooks, we would have names of people that were very impactful in making sure that we were perfect in our training. And
that looks like a view of Air Force One flying near Launch Pad 39A for a special guest to have a special view of the astronauts on the launch pad. President Trump on board, making his way to Kennedy Space Center to hopefully view a launch at 4:33 this afternoon. And there they are in view of the launch pad, so no doubt he's looking at the window, looking out the window at Bob and Doug on the pad. That's got to be an amazing sight to see from on board Air Force One. And we are at T-minus 1 hour, 46 minutes, 22 seconds and counting from launch. And guys, the last time we actually did a little bit of research when we found out that the president was coming. The last president to witness a launch from here at Kennedy Space Center was Bill Clinton. That was back in October 1998 for STS-95. So it's been a minute.
Friends is going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
He's already there.
and we are about 56 seconds away from the, oh no we're not, we have an hour and 56 seconds away, never mind. Instead, we are 1 hour and 45 minutes away from launch, and Tahira, you are there with the social teams. I bet you are seeing some excitement on all the things we just saw on the screen there.
Hey, Lauren, I mean, like you said, things are really ramping up on social media right now, especially seeing that hatch close and also just watching this flyover happen. We are up to 1.7 million viewers across all of our social media channels. And let's check out what people are saying on Twitter right now. So it looks like we've got more creativity still going on. Some people are crying with pride in Houston, feel it. We even have Elizabeth Banks, who from the Hunger Games, that's awesome. We have more just good luck and well wishes for Bob and Doug across the nation. This has been a constant online today, which is so great to see. More just future astronauts and kiddos getting excited. We even have the band Bastille tuning in for launch. This is awesome. And just looks like more people standing by to witness this historic launch today. And so, guys, on top of what's being said on social media, we've also got a lot of well wishes from everyone across our country showing us what today means in their creative way. So let's take a look at that video.
I am so ready to launch America.
I built this fake soda rocket and I'm gonna launch it.
They're doing a preview. Launch America.
Wow, I mean, guys, just look at everybody excited for today's launch. If that doesn't get you pumped, like, come on, let's go. We even got to see astronaut Snoopy in there, which is a personal favorite of mine. I actually have my lucky Snoopy pin here. You probably can't see it, but he is literally my spirit animal. Anyways, guys, get excited. The time is almost here. And with that, let's toss back to Lauren at Kennedy. Lauren.
Thanks, Tahira. Tahira likes the Snoopy. I like the little girl doing the worm. Leland, she wasn't doing the meatball. She was doing the worm.
There's someone else who's doing the meatball, I'm sure.
I want to know what that looks like.
No, I don't. I don't. Clearly, this is capturing the attention of people all across the country and the world. So please continue to join the conversation by using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica across Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
And we've had the opportunity to share with you a lot about the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle the crew is sitting in right now, a lot about the crew themselves and the significance of today as the official return of human launch capability to American shores. And now we want to turn our attention to where the crew is going, the International Space Station. And for that, let's take you to Mission Control in Houston. Gary?
Thank you, Marie. The International Space Station is an incredible facility whose construction, operation, and ongoing science, all these efforts have been made possible by an unprecedented international collaboration. So to tell us more about the space station, we have International Space Station Chief Scientist Kurt Costello with us. Kurt, welcome.
Gary, thank you. It's an amazing day to be here to talk to you about this historic launch to the ISS.
It really is. Now, many viewers may not realize that there is a laboratory that's the size of a football field, 250 miles above the Earth, and that it's been there for nearly 20 years conducting revolutionary science. Can you share with us more about what the space station is and what it's accomplished so far?
Sure, Gary. Over those 20 years, we've conducted over 3,100 experiments on board this space station. Those 3,100 experiments have been done by over 4,100 investigators and represent the work of over 108 regions and countries. The work going on the space station is not only there to help us with our exploration goals for how to go further into space, but also to bring back benefits for Earth and to produce a commercial marketplace in low Earth orbit. All three of these objectives, along with the international cooperation that it took to build such an amazing laboratory in space, are great examples of the objectives of the ISS program.
Kurt, we know that today's mission is critical to providing us with a steady cadence of operational flights. But why is it so important for us to have this capability from a research perspective?
That's a great question. Today's test flight brings us to the beginning of the commercial crew program. A commercial crew program which will raise our occupancy on the U.S. segment of the space station to 4 astronauts. And that 4th astronaut comes as a real premium to doing research on the space station. The tasks don't get particularly more intensive to do systems and maintenance, so that 4th astronaut, that time becomes dedicated to performing more science. In fact, enough time that it will essentially double the amount of crew time we have to perform experiments on board station. The return to U.S. soil also brings us the ability to return samples more quickly and get human samples back down to the ground more quickly as well.
Kurt, you're talking about all this great research, you're talking about scientific experiments, but what would you say to someone who's watching this and thinking, this isn't relevant to me, I'm never going to space, I don't do science? What do you say to those people?
Well, again, one of the focuses is on the ISS benefits for humanities. And for all of us who've been stuck at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been wondering, wouldn't it be nice to have more bandwidth? Why does the internet slow down? Some of the research we're doing on board Space Station, particularly into Z-band optical fiber, is using the fact that we don't have sedimentation in a microgravity environment to develop new materials that will help us build more perfect fiber optic cables, which will allow us for better bandwidth and lower cost in implementing networks here on Earth. And then if you're not really a tech geek, maybe your interests lie more in human health. And then we have multiple experiments going on to help us develop new drugs, new treatments on board the ISS. Pharmaceutical companies are working on methods that allow us to crystallize proteins in space in a more purified and more standardized method. And this could lead to monoclonal antibody suspensions that we can treat through injection instead of a painful infusion. We also are developing studies into our capability to produce tissues and organs in space. Again, because you don't have sedimentation, there's a capability there to produce more realistic tissues that can someday possibly be used to prevent human disease.
Now, Kurt, I know they have some cargo going up with them, but I understand they plan to bring some science back.
That's right, Gary. A lot of their cargo going up with them are crew supplies and EVA supplies to support them if they have to do EVAs on board.
While they're waiting on them to launch, I'm going to go ahead and share my link on my Facebook account if I can.
We have student experiments
So stand by.
and seeds that will be returning with the crew Dragon. We also have a number of experiments that are dependent on
Join me as I cover the live historic launch of the Dragon 2 crewed mission to the International Space Station from Cape Canaveral, Florida! Exclamation mark. See if I can find a rocket. Join me as I cover this historic launch of the Dragon 2 from Cape Canaveral, Florida! Exclamation mark.
They are very excited. I'm sure they are. Gokatsu yaku o inori shiteimasu. Honjitsu wa arigato gozaimashita. Thank you so much, Soichi, for joining us today. Oh, Marina, you are so good. Domo arigato. And we'll both enjoy the beautiful...
I hate it when technology starts messing up.
Were they speaking Japanese?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
It was on this NASA TV. I have to restart it because it was messing up. Hold on just a second, folks. I don't have any viewers. I don't have any viewers. But I'm going to change that. Give me just a second. Okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that. We are covering the launch of the Drgon 2 from the International Space Station in Cape Canaveral, Florida. And if anyone can hear me, just give me a like. And if anyone can hear me, just give me a like. And if anyone can hear me, just give me a like. And if anyone can hear me. We are going live in just a few minutes. If you will, please share this video. Test, test. Test, test. Okie doke. Here we go, folks. We are just about to witness this historic launch.
African American, Asian American, French, German, Russian, the first female commander, breaking bread at 17,500 miles an hour, going around the planet every 90 minutes. And when I think of that perspective shift that I got, looking out the window, flying hometown, flying over Leo's hometown in Paris, flying over Yuri's hometown in Russia.
It's exactly what that piece of art was all about.
If you're just joining me, welcome.
And following today's mission, we will be one step closer to a future where we can all have that experience. We can all have that orbital perspective and the ability to explore new worlds. In just over an hour from now, Bob and Doug will be the first people to launch on an American vehicle in almost a decade. For the team at SpaceX, it's really hard to put into words how honored we feel about the trust that Bob, Doug, and NASA have put into our team to carry out this critical mission. I worked on Crew Dragon for 2 years, and I can just imagine what all of my friends and colleagues are thinking right now as they sit in anticipation and excitement for what's to come.
Absolutely. And speaking of those who have carried the hopes and dreams of science and exploration, we have a few shout outs to share with you from some big fans of NASA and SpaceX.
Wow, we're making history again. The NASA program. I'm there with you guys in spirit. Bob, Doug, good luck. I know you'll be fine. I'll be watching and got everything crossed, arms, legs. I'm tied in a knot. Can't wait for you to get back safely.
This is the first time a U.S.-built rocket has taken people into space in 9 years. It's quite an accomplishment. So for us at the Planetary Society, more rockets means more exploration. More people in space means more exploration. More countries involved in the endeavor of spaceflight means more exploration. This is how we know the cosmos and our place within it. So congratulations, SpaceX. Here's wishing your team, and the crew especially, a safe journey and the joy of discovery. Let's go.
And a big thanks to William Shatner and Bill Nye for those well wishes. And while we're keeping an eye on the pad, we want to bring in NASA astronaut Rex Walheim. If that name rings a bell, it's because he flew 3 Space Shuttle missions to the International Space Station, including the final one by Atlantis, STS-135. He was one of the last 4 people to ascend the tower at Pad 39A and head to space. And he currently is Deputy Director of Safety and Mission Assurance at Johnson Space Center in Houston. Rex Walheim, thanks for joining us. You and Leland actually flew together.
Hey, Rex dog.
Really enjoyed flying with Leland. Hey, dog.
Rex, you flew on the final shuttle mission, we said STS-135 with Doug, in fact. What's it like seeing him in Crew Dragon right now?
It's great. This is what we've been looking forward to. You know, after the end of the shuttle program, It's a very important time we wanted to transition to this commercialization of spaceflight to allow these commercial companies to take our astronauts to and from the space station. So in the 9 years we've had since we last landed on Atlantis, we really worked hard for that. We worked with our SpaceX partners and our Boeing partners, and here we are. Today's the day. We're taking that first step in this new era.
What do you remember most about launch day for STS-135?
I think it was just you felt the weight of it. The Space Shuttle was a storied program, 135 flights, and thousands of people had poured their lives into this program to launch probes to the planets, to launch the Hubble Space Telescope, and then, of course, to build the International Space Station. So you knew the incredible accomplishments of this program, and so you wanted to finish strong. And then when it finally became launch day, you'd finished the study, you'd worked really hard, and now it was time to kind of soak it in. And I think that's what Bob and Doug are doing right now. They're sitting on the vehicle, talking to each other, listening to the sounds, and feeling the vibrations as it starts up. And it's going to be a great experience for them.
Hi, Rex. What is your take on private astronauts going to space?
I think it's great. I think the more we can do to commercialize space, to make access easier, the better we are. And I think that's part of this whole program. You get the cost down, then more people can afford it. And you get the cost down, you can do more things in space, more science, more research. And it is a transformative experience to fly in space, and I wish more people could see that. When you look out on the planet, like Lehman was talking about earlier, with your crewmates from different countries all around the world, it gives you a different perspective. It gives you a perspective that we're all crewmates on this planet Earth. And we kind of get that now with the pandemic. We understand that we're all in this together. And that's what the space program does, and I want to see more people get a chance to see the Earth from that vantage point, and I think it'll bring us all closer together.
Hey Rex, a very serious question here. The worm or the meatball?
Leland, I saw you dissing the worm earlier. How can you do that? The worm is awesome. I'm so glad to have the NASA worm insignia back. It's great.
All right, well, thank you very much, Rex. We appreciate you. And as we watch Bob and Doug there in the capsule, we are an hour, 10 minutes, 57 seconds and counting from launch, and we're going to send it over to Hawthorne for an update. Jesse?
Thanks, Marie. We're just an hour and 13 minutes away from launch, and things are really getting ready to pick up here. Since arriving at the spacecraft, Bob and Doug were helped by our closeout engineers to get into their seats, attach their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air, pressurized nitrox, and a communication link to Dragon systems. They conducted leak checks, which were successful, and communications checks with the Corps here in Hawthorne, which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the entire mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. This is where they are checking their comm path through both ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites that we'll use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
Right, and after those suit checks were complete, the closeout team was able to seal up the hatch, which also got its own leak check, and we confirmed that it was good to go. The closeout team at this point has already departed the area around the pad. They were about 25 minutes ahead of their schedule, and right now weather operators are kicking off their final check on wind speeds at the pad, which are going to be used, and they're really important for that final go, no-go for launch. Before we get to that final go, no-go, various teams at both NASA and SpaceX are going to do some internal go polls, just making sure conditions are good with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. So let's check back in with Houston real quick for a status on the team there supporting the space station on their readiness for launch.
Mission Control Houston, led by Flight Director Zeb Scoville, has been pulled, and we're go for launch. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for the mission are reported good, and we're standing by. Station power and communication systems are looking healthy, life support systems and thermal conditions are normal, and the trajectory is right on track to ensure that Dragon's flight will meet right up with the orbiting complex as planned. Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station is finishing up some tasks, going into his pre-sleep period, and will be able to watch the launch of Bob and Doug. Mission Control Houston will largely be in monitor mode for the first 18 hours of the flight, with the team here really jumping into the mix tomorrow when Dragon gets in range of the International Space Station and we begin integrated operations. So I'll send it back. Everything's green on our board from the International Space Station. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and Godspeed to Bob and Doug.
Woohoo!
All right, thank you, Gary. If you are just now joining us, you picked a really good time because we are 1 hour, 8 minutes and counting away from launch. This is our coverage for this mission known as Demonstration Mission 2 or Demo 2. Liftoff time still holding for 4:33 p.m. Eastern, tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or Dragon, and we're still waiting for that weather to hopefully cooperate. We're still tracking a few things like precipitation and flight through clouds. We're hoping that clears within the next 20 minutes or so. Over the last 3 hours, our crew members, Doug Hurley and Bob Benkin, donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room and made their way out to launch pad 39A. They walked out of the crew quarters building just as every astronaut to fly from this spaceport has done since Apollo 7. They were transported to the pad where the crew now on board the Crew Dragon spacecraft, and we're continuing to get views of them inside that cabin live.
Today is a historic launch. It will be the first time a commercially built spacecraft will launch people into orbit, and the first time since the U.S. has sent people to the space station from American soil since 2011 with the retirement of the Space Shuttle program. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have Bob and Doug arm the launch escape system, and begin fueling Falcon 9. Launch is set for 4:33 p.m. Eastern. This will include a 12-minute flight to orbit and then a 19-hour flight to dock with the International Space Station at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
Today's mission is the culmination of years of work between the teams at SpaceX and at NASA. Demo 2 is going to be an end-to-end flight test. We're going to start with launch today, go all the way to docking with the space station, and then when Bob and Doug come home, splashing down in the Atlantic. And this is going to be the final test for NASA to certify SpaceX for regular crew flights to the space station.
And we've been hearing a little from the crew on board Dragon, which they are currently strapped into their seats, as you can see on your right screen. They're already through their seats, or they've already been strapped into their seats, and through communications and leak checks, they're able to follow all the milestones still ahead on those displays just above them that you can see there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to equalize the pressures in the common manifolds just to raise them a little bit. So we will be momentarily cycling the tank isolation valves. I just wanted to let you know for awareness.
Just wanted to take a pause to listen into the nets.
Okay, we appreciate that, Jay.
So they'll be getting insight into all of the Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we proceed towards launch. At T-minus 1 hour and 7 minutes, let's check in with John Insprecher for a status update on both of those vehicles. What's the update, John?
Well, the good news is we've had a smooth countdown this afternoon. SpaceX team is working no technical issues on either the Falcon 9 or the Dragon spacecraft. For the Falcon 9, operators have completed, well, they are actually still in work. They're going to complete in a few minutes propulsion checkouts that are being done on both the first and second stages. The team will be assessing their launch readiness with a final go, no-go poll. That'll come at T-minus 45 minutes, and that'll be followed by propellant loading starting at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, earlier today, Dragon operators performed a series of checkouts of Dragon's flight systems. The spacecraft is also currently go for launch. Our NASA crew, astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Benkin, that you can see inside the Dragon capsule on the right-hand side of the display, they are currently going through the various screens, simple checks. Their hatch is closed, suit leak checks are complete, count checks are good. The next major event for Dragon is going to be retract of the crew access arm that you can see on the left monitor up alongside the Dragon capsule. That's going to happen somewhere between 45 and 42 minutes before liftoff. Now, the big one right now is the range. The range is currently red for launch from historic pad 39A. Now, the air and the sea space is clear, and the worldwide network of ground stations, as well as the tracking and data relay satellites, they are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. But the range is red for the weather. We recently did clear, we went green for lightning, but we are still violating several constraints. Rain, cumulus clouds, field mills, which is essentially you can tell that the atmosphere is energized around the launch site. We are expecting that we'll possibly clear that. We're going to hear a weather briefing at 1 hour with the expectation that those conditions may clear shortly afterwards and allow us to move into propellant loading. Also, we've been releasing balloons
What we're seeing at the upper altitudes is conditions look good for Falcon 9 with Dragon. No concerns have been expressed by the GNC guidance team right now. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window at 4:33:35 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or just past 33 minutes after the upcoming hour. So we get one chance at it today. But currently, T-minus 1 hour and 3 minutes, just passing that. Falcon 9, Dragon are go. The range is ready to support, but now we're waiting on the weather as we've been expecting all afternoon.
Thanks, John. We've got an extensive history now of flying Falcon 9 from the Florida coast, and just last year completed a test run of the mission that we're less than an hour from beginning here today.
Yeah, the purpose of that mission was to demonstrate Dragon's capability to safely and reliably fly to and from the International Space Station. The success of Demo 1 was a really exciting moment, and it paved the way for today's mission, where we are just moments away, hopefully if we get that weather, from flying U.S. astronauts from U.S. soil for the first time since 2011.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. As I mentioned earlier, SpaceX has successfully completed 21 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, including 20 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
Much of what was learned with the cargo Dragon was leveraged in the design of this vehicle.
Cycling is complete. Expected behavior. And wanted to hear if you were able to hear those.
We actually did, Jay. We were just making a comment about that. I heard some clicking, and Bob watched it on the
Unlike the previous version of Dragon, that
Sorry
helps
about
towards
that
our
technical glitch, but
reusable
we are back.
SpaceX.
T-minus 1 hour to launch.
We're go for section 6. When ready, we report go for launch.
Thank you everyone for watching. Please share this video, give it a thumbs up.
SpaceX Dragon will put section 6 in work.
So the crew just has a couple checks, and when they are ready for launch, we're going to hear them report to the core that they are go for launch.
We are go for launch.
Continuing to walk you through the Dragon spacecraft, opposite of that nose cone is the trunk. We can see it on the left-hand screen there, where it's kind of split right down the middle, with the left side black and the right side white. The trunk provides an attachment point to Falcon 9, the Dragon capsule, and can carry any cargo uphill. On the outside, one half of the trunk contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system into space using SpaceX's new Pica tiling technology. The other half contains solar cells that are used to charge the spacecraft's batteries during flight.
SpaceX Dragon, Bob and I are go for launch.
And you heard that call out right
Copy,
there?
go for launch.
Go for launch.
Next up will be the go no go flow at T-minus 45.
Doug, or go for launch, and next up...
We're holding in step 6.5.
You're hearing it live from the Mets. This is amazing, very exciting. The spacecraft is designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo. These are made of carbon fiber and will be custom sized for any crew members flying on board.
That control panel that's centered between the pilot and commander seats consists of 3 touchscreen displays, and that just again allows the crew to operate the vehicle and fly it manually, but also look at all of their procedures, relative position over the Earth, the space station, any alarms, alerts, anything that they could possibly want to do on Dragon is through those touchscreens.
And lastly, our Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Crew Dragon, giving the crew the ability to safely escape from the time of launch all the way to orbit.
And that launch escape system was put into work a little bit earlier this year, again on that in-flight abort test. As we look to the future beyond this test flight, the first operational SpaceX crewed mission for NASA will be a little bit later this year after Bob and Doug come home. NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, were chosen to support this mission, being called Crew 1.
But today, Doug Hurley is the spacecraft commander for this mission. He previously flew on 2 Space Shuttle missions as the pilot on STS-127 and STS-135, which was the final Space Shuttle flight. Here's a closer look at Doug Hurley.
Please review your launch commit criteria. Again, this is to review and confirm a violation of launch commit criteria. We are tracking one issue with weather still. And I think we'll track that all the way down to launch to clear that. This will also go for arming and launch escape system and go for propellant.
And this is the on countdown net reporting that technical poll is completed. All systems are proceeding. We're monitoring the weather as they'll be briefed. We're also looking at a watch item on a hydraulics QD rod ring. Ring pressure will come up at -8 minutes 30 seconds, and we'll be able to verify decay rate. No concerns at this time. Everything's reading nominal, but watching that item. No other constraints on Falcon 9 or ground systems.
Stage 2, RV1 bleed is complete.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. We are watching the Dragon 2 rocket launch crewed mission to the International Space Station. Please like this video, share it with your friends. We are live in T-minus 55 minutes and counting to the historic launch from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
All right, we just crossed the 55-minute mark away from launch. Sitting right next to Doug Hurley, who's closest to your screen, is NASA astronaut Bob Behnken. He is the Joint Operations Commander for Demo 2, and Behnken previously flew on 2 Space Shuttle missions, STS-123 and STS-130, and also served a tour as Chief of the Astronaut Office. So here's a little bit more about the man who said testing out a brand new spacecraft is an astronaut's dream.
When you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you. One is the kind of the celebratory piece of it, which is that you're walking out of the suit up room and getting in the vehicle that's going to take you to the launch pad. When you close the hatch, that's really when Doug and I are in the vehicle, and it's our vehicle, and we're really in control of the mission at that point.
Test pilots, their task proved that man could fly into orbit around the Earth and return live and well to talk about it.
There's always a balance of managing risk as you go forward to execute a test point and figuring out a way to collect the data. We hear a sound. Okay, is that sound an expected sound? Or we see a light, is that light an expected light? What's the source of it? Does it sync up with something else that's going on or not? So trying to dissect all of that in real time in your head is, a lot of things happen like that on launching of a vehicle.
From St. Anne, Missouri, he is an Air Force colonel and flight test engineer. He flew aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour twice. Introducing NASA astronaut Bob Behnken.
My career at NASA has kind of spanned a couple of decades at this point. I arrived with the class of 2000, went through the training program, primarily focused on the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station, learning those systems. Launched a couple times on vehicles. You know, the second time was definitely different than the first time. You can feel a little bit guilty of, hey, should I study one more thing? Or is there one more piece of information I should get? Am I really prepared or not? So that's definitely different between where I was on my first flight and where I'm at right now. It's been really interesting, I think, for both my wife and I to have gone through the process of seeing each other launch in space. I've seen her take that risk and had it be in front of her, and I've done that to her. And there's just something different about watching a rocket launch when there are people on board. You feel a little bit differently about the pit of your stomach, and I can only tell you it's multiplied significantly when it's somebody that you know, and then somebody, of course, that's a family member. It's even multiplied more.
For me personally, as a spouse, watching everything that Bob has put into this over the last 5 years, the dedication that he's shown, the perseverance is pretty special. For both of us, though, the way our minds work, it won't be until sort of the mission is complete that you have really a chance to savor it and celebrate it. This is a huge accomplishment for an Air Force flight test engineer to be part of the demonstration mission of a brand new vehicle. It's going to be amazing.
Without a partner that has that same appreciation, I think it can be challenging for some folks. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that takes away from family that that my spouse appreciates, and I love her for that. Really, my role on the Demo 2 mission is to make sure that we get this vehicle tested and evaluated so that we can move on to more operational missions at the International Space Station. We've got a lot of objectives on board the vehicle that we need to accomplish to really make sure that it's good to go. We'll make sure all those systems are working during the test flight so that the future missions will have them available even if they don't plan to utilize them. Through years of the NASA team, I'm helping to share that experience and teaching them the lessons that we've learned by going through this. Now there's another capability. It's NASA to operate something of this magnitude. When is the last time humans launched on a new vehicle? Certainly on the American side, it's been several decades. Now we're in a time when we've got multiple vehicles under development. It's a great time from a space exploration time frame just to see all that happening, and it's because of this nurturing of the environment, being able to pull in a wider group of people who can contribute towards human spaceflight. It's a super cool time. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing. Me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real, and so I'm excited for him to see this launch. I want to thank the entire commercial crew program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station.
We're just over 49.5 minutes away from launch of the Falcon 9 carrying Dragon to the space station. Right now, the launch director and the launch team are preparing for a readiness for launch poll. In this poll, the 13 members of the launch team will electronically indicate a go for launch. This is also the go for propellant load. Now, we're going to hear that in a couple of minutes, so while we wait, we are tracking you watching from all over the country. We're seeing large numbers of you logging on or tuning in from coast to coast, as well as around the world. We want to know, is this your first time watching a launch live? If not, how many have you seen before? Tell us using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media website. As for me, this isn't my first one. I've seen a lot, but everyone is exciting. Now, coming up, we're going to go into a readiness poll, as I mentioned. Currently, right now, on other nets, the SpaceX launch director is checking to verify the Dragon team is ready and that the NASA launch management team is ready. They'll come back in about T-minus 47 minutes with instructions to the SpaceX Falcon 9 team to make their final assessments. Then they log into the procedure
It's a little different than the old days where you hear a go, 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 position by position, all up and down the row. In this electronic age, everybody just clicks on whether they go or no go. The launch director will then, at T-minus 45 minutes, summarize the end of the poll and will then provide instructions for the team. At the same time, we will begin getting ready for the crew access arm retraction, and we'll show you that on one of the screens that we've got up. Now, currently, we are continuing to monitor the weather. The weather is still red. It is improving. We're looking at one cell between the radar and the pad. We're keeping our fingers crossed that conditions will improve, but we're going to be watching that for about another 15 minutes. So it looks like we're going to be good to begin propellant load once we hear the polls, but we still have to get get the range green so that we can actually do the launch in just 47 minutes from now. Let's listen to the countdown net for a moment.
And we are about to launch the Dragon 2 rocket from Cape Canaveral, Florida. We're live from Kennedy Space Center, and we're about to witness the historic launch of the Dragon 2 spacecraft. This is a crewed mission, a very special mission. I'm excited. Please like this video, share it with your friends.
Now coming up on 46 minutes, 10 seconds before launch. Didn't hear any significant chatter coming over countdown 1.
Yes, launch director and countdown net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load. Launch control, proceed with swing and crew arm. Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes. Thank you, launch control. A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring for Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm instructions. Here in Fire Room 4, in the event of a fire alarm, key operators, previously briefed, will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, we will evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. One final reminder, they'll be arming the launch escape system momentarily. Need all personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation from the second stage. Crew access arm recheck has started.
T-minus 44
Mike
minutes.
Taylor, the SpaceX launch director, give instructions to the team. We've also just heard the call. The crew access arm retraction is underway. Great view from the camera inside the White Room as we see the arm moving away from the Dragon capsule, one of the major events necessary to get down to T0. The next one coming up will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule. Now, right now, the next plan for Falcon 9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin loading propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, Falcon 9's looking good, Dragon's looking good. The range continues to be go for launch in terms of the clearance around the launch pad, both the air and the sea space. Looking at the flight corridor, the ground stations, the NASA tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support. And we just continue to monitor the weather. Our team is getting constant updates. We're monitoring weather data sensors around the launch site, looking to make sure that we can get everything into the green position. The one that we're mostly looking at right now is how much rain we're going to get between now and liftoff, whether it's just going to be mild precipitation that's within the rules for loading propellant. That's what the expectation is, but we're going to continue to watch that. So fingers crossed, but right now coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, 18 seconds and counting,
Everything but the weather's go, and the weather is trending in the right direction. So we've got our fingers crossed here.
T-minus 43 minutes on the launch pad.
At this time, we're going to send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action is picking up on the launch pad.
Thanks, John I. Now that countdown clock is continuing to tick, and we are 42 minutes and 46 seconds away from launch. As you just saw, the crew arm retracted. That is the last major visual milestone before liftoff. And we should be hearing out on the net soon confirmation that the launch escape system is armed. When that happens, all 8 throttle valves are opened, which means that those engines can ignite.
For section 7.
Okay. So that means those 8 throttle valves are opened, and if those Super Dragos needed to fire in order for Dragon to escape of the pad, they could.
And so things running just a little bit ahead of schedule right now.
Field lead is complete.
Now we just saw the crew access arm retract just a minute ago. We saw NASA astronauts Doug Hurley.
And in 7.2, our visors are closed, and we're arming the launch escape system.
So we just heard the astronauts confirm that they are about to arm the launch escape system. That happens just before fueling begins, which we expect to happen in just a couple of minutes. We saw Bob and Doug suit up a little over 3 hours ago. Then we watched them drive out to Launch Complex 39A. They were assisted by the SpaceX ground team with Crew Dragon ingress. That happened a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then we saw the spacecraft hatch close. And again, just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract. We just heard that the crew armed the launch escape system. And in just a few minutes, we are going to hear the call that they have started propellant loading.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
So we just heard that verification that the launch escape system is armed.
We're switching to Jan 2.
And we are going to send it over to Hawthorne to take us through prop loading. Jesse?
From the parachutes to the launch escape system, SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch vehicle ever flown. And joining us today, we have SpaceX's Nick Picone, who was our mission manager for our in-flight abort mission earlier this year and currently works on the Starlink team. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. I'm here at the Launch and Landing Recovery Center with the recovery team and our Dragon ground operations team monitoring the launch.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about the critical safety features on this new version of Dragon?
Sure. So Dragon 2 was designed with long-term reuse and reliability in mind. So fundamentally, there are multiple layers of redundancy to any of the failure modes that we could conceive of, that NASA could conceive of when we were working to design and test this vehicle over the past few years. But in the event that we encounter an unforeseen failure mode or multiple failures which push us outside of our design space, Dragon also has backup systems and operational controls intended to keep Bob and Doug safe. I'm sure you heard a lot about it today, but the launch escape system is the primary backup system that we have from the moment that the vehicle is here on being fueled all the way up until orbital insertion. At a high level, the launch escape system, in the event of a major Falcon anomaly or emergency, will terminate Falcon thrust, separate Dragon from Falcon, and it'll use Dragon's 8 Super Draco engines to quickly pull the vehicle away from any kind of Falcon anomaly.
And you've talked a lot about the launch escape system. How exactly is that activated? Is it autonomous? Is it manually activated?
Definitely. So for this system to work as designed, you have to remember that the vehicle could be flying at hundreds or thousands of miles an hour through the lower atmosphere. So it's really important that it's extremely fast and highly reliable with very low chance of false positives. The launch escape system fundamentally is set to look at a set of pre-programmed criteria which are on board the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon are looking at high rate telemetry, looking for abnormal vehicle dynamics, loss of communication between critical systems, or manual commanding. Our launch director and chief engineer, who you've heard a lot from today, are capable of sending a manual command to Dragon to initiate a launch escape. And Bob and Doug are also always able to actuate the launch escape handle and initiate a launch escape themselves as well. Now that the system is armed, all of this is currently active on the vehicle.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it. And we did have an in-flight abort test earlier this year to test this out. Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
Definitely. It was possibly the most flight-like test of an orbital class booster in history. It was a fully flight-like test using a full Falcon 9 rocket, which we had to knowingly destroy in order to get this fully integrated system. For folks who didn't get a chance to see it, the vehicle followed a normal crew launch trajectory about a minute and a half into flight. We had Dragon autonomously trigger the launch escape system based on a reconfiguration of those triggers I was just talking about. Thankfully, we had we continued through flight, had a successful parachute deployment and splashdown, and we did see Falcon rather spectacularly blow up about 10 seconds after separation. It's important to recognize that all of that happens from command to actual separation of the vehicle in under half a second.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us and talking through those details with us. Enjoy the launch today. So we're going to send it back to KSC with Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. We are about a minute and a half away from propellant load. At T-minus 35 minutes, we should hear the call out on the nets that propellant load has started. So that's about a minute and 13 seconds away.
T-minus 35 minutes.
Hey, Marie and Lauren, I am getting goosebumps over here. This is an exciting moment. When I was sitting in the vehicle, when we retracted everything, when all the prop was getting loaded up, I was just going through my crew notebook. I was thinking about, what my first step would be if there was a malfunction, because usually everything goes nominally when you fly to space, but you have to think about the things that you have to take care of, the first steps you have to take care of. And on my mission, I was calling out the abort calls, like if we had lost an engine, where would we go next?
There's the vehicle assembly building in Orlando.
The world. So I think that's what those guys are probably thinking about now, and just really getting ready for this mission to go off.
Absolutely, and we're just now about 20 seconds from when we expect propellant loading to start. Again, that's fueling of the rocket.
T-minus 34 minutes and counting.
You should hear that call out any second now on the nets, so let's listen in.
Propellant load has started.
Fantastic. So prop load has started. We've started loading liquid oxygen on stage 1 and stage 2. Liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene. So now that we are 34 minutes and 42 seconds away from the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011, we know that the launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling. Dragon prop load happened weeks ago, actually just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And those propellants, which are MMH, or monomethyl hydrogen, that's our fuel, and NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's our oxidizer, those not only feed the Draco engines that propel Dragon on orbit, but they also supply those 8 Super Draco engines of the launch escape system. So I have one right here, a little model. Oh, it doesn't come off the stand.
Don't break it, Lauren.
All right, it's very nice. As you can see, the Dragon is actually broken up into 4 quads, and each quad has 2 of the Super Draco engines for a total of 8 of them. And as I mentioned, they are biprop engines. They have MMH and NTO as their oxidizer. Now, most abort systems from past space vehicles, I believe like Soyuz, Mercury, Apollo, they all had a pointy escape tower on top where there was essentially like a mini rocket engine or a series of rocket engines on top. And If they weren't used, that escape tower would have to jettison itself from the vehicle. If it was used, it would be used to lift the vehicle off of the rocket. Well, Dragon is a little bit different in that its escape system is actually integrated into the vehicle, and that's great for a couple of reasons. One less thing you have to jettison on a nominal flight, and so they're pretty dormant, just those throttle valves open unless they're used, and hopefully they never have to be. And yeah, I mean, the other thing that offers you is the ability to escape from the pad all the way to orbit. Because if you jettisoned your escape system prior to that, you couldn't. So yeah, that's a little Dragon there.
Again,
Right.
new era, much safer design.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for walking us through that, Lauren. Again, the launch escape system is armed. That protects Bob and Doug so that if something were to go wrong, they can shoot off of the pad away from the rocket and parachute to safety in the ocean. That is such a crucial safety capability. And so now we want to go over to Hawthorne for an operational update with John.
Thanks, Marie. We are counting down those final minutes. Everything is still looking good on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon vehicles for an on-time launch, but weather is trending the wrong way right now. We're keeping our ears open in case we hear that the weather is going to be no-go for the rest of the count. Right now, we are counting down at T-minus 32 minutes.
Stage 1 logs and
Falcon 9
RP1
did
flurries
begin
are nominal.
propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, right on time. The propellants we use on Falcon 9 are a fuel, which is rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, refined petroleum. We use an oxidizer, and that's the super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX as we call it. Those two propellants come together, but they don't light, so we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-tub. You might see that just before first stage ignition, or maybe later in the second stage ignition. You get a green colored flame as the T-tub comes out into the oxygen, and that ignites the main engines right before the rocket takes off or the second stage engine lights. Now currently in the fueling, RP1 fuel is about 10% full on the first stage. That's the bottom 2/3 of the stack of the vehicle you can see on the left. The first stage is that long white cylinder at the bottom, plus that black cylinder called the inner stage.
T-minus 30 minutes and
That's
counting.
the entire first stage that we're loading with LOX and RP1 kerosene. That's the part that comes back to Earth. The second stage just above it, the white cylinder, and then above that will be the Dragon trunk and the capsule. Now currently, the second stage is also loading fuel with RP1. That's about 8% full right now. We are loading liquid oxygen on the first stage. The second stage liquid oxygen load will begin at T-minus 16.5 minutes if the weather cooperates. So LOX loading will then continue on both the first and second stage until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading is also underway into pressure vessels on the second stage. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is being pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. Dragon on board the spacecraft. You can see the astronauts are monitoring systems while propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. Now when we flew the first demo flight last year and then the in-flight escape test earlier this year, the sounds inside the Dragon capsule were recorded. So as part of the training, the sounds of the propellant loading were played back to acclimate the crew to what they're experiencing now. I'm listening to some discussion on one of the back nets, trying to track where we are with the weather criteria. We're just passing another weather gate right now, trying to see whether or not the conditions are go. In certain situations, when the weather is no-go, you have to wait 30 minutes, and we are now inside of 30 minutes. But if the cloud moves away, if the conditions improve, we may be able to continue the countdown for another 14 minutes and reassess. So we're waiting to see whether or not we can continue the count. Currently we are. The range, they're ready to support with no problems in the air and the sea space area. But again, the weather, that's the one that's looking bad, and we're going to continue to listen. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we're going to have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity on May 30th.
For Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, with two noticeable differences: docking and splashdown.
As we await T-minus 0 in just a little over 28 minutes from now, ground operations doing those final series of system checks, making sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for liftoff, and really keeping an eye on that weather. You're just continuing to get live views of the teams. You've got Falcon 9 and Dragon on your left, and then Bob and Doug on the right as they prepare at the Cape for liftoff.
Once we T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until Falcon 9 and first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the space station.
And once it gets on orbit, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where Dragon will execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the International Space Station. And you're seeing some of that track in the animation on your screen right now. After doing enough of these burns, they'll put Dragon... Oh, sounds like we're going to get a weather update real quick for the crew.
Go ahead, Spacer.
Yeah, we're currently just evaluating a constraint on the field mill rule, which looks at lightning energy dissipation. We expect to have an update at about T-minus 20, and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Copy, so I'll give you some more words in about 6 minutes.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to find out in about 6 minutes if we're going to have enough time. And John, I was referring to a couple of those weather situations where we have to have a certain amount of time. In this case, with the field mills, about 15 minutes. So they have until about 16 minutes and 30 seconds to really make sure that we're going to have enough time for that to dissipate. So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
And a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if we are launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which used a process called berthing. Now, berthing requires the spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously.
Stage 2 cryo-helium load started.
Autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism. It's the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules together on board station. It's a little bit slower process than docking, but the hatches are significantly larger than docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up large cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So, we have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
That's an incredible number. I think, realizing that you don't have to be a military astronaut or a NASA astronaut to fly in space. You can be a regular civilian, just a regular person going up to space on a SpaceX type rocket. So I think that's why the numbers are so high.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on STS 129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it and we knew where we were going, and we always know that you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen, but we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios. And so we want to be safe, we want to be safe for our families, and we'll do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it.
I know.
And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is, and those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
These clouds can seem really deceiving at times, right? You see the blue skies peeking through and you think everything's fine, but you just don't know. That's why we have those launch weather officers.
Absolutely, and I know, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had in the past, there's always a very good chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria that you have to meet. And we're going to listen in now. We're just seconds away from a weather update.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0. 1645 local, I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about T-minus 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below,
And that didn't sound great right there. That was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision.
If you're just joining us, we're waiting on a weather report from Cape Canaveral, Florida, for this historic launch of the Dragon 2. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.
And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Insprucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather. We're still
T-minus 18 minutes and counting.
LD is
We are still
starting
red
some
on
discussions.
T-minus
Expect an update
18
from LD.
We're
minutes.
waiting in about another minute for one final check with weather. We're going to check at T-minus 17 minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that, you know, if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
Continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and today's launch attempt, launch control. Go ahead and the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please. Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100. It was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day, and we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, what they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like a T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into safely taking the
because of the weather, they've
the
scrubbed the
pressurization
launch.
gases back off the first and second stages. As things get into a safe configuration, then we will disarm the escape system on Dragon, and we'll bring the crew access arm back around the spacecraft. So right now, we got down to just inside 17 minutes. The hardware was working very well on both Dragon and spacecraft. We had the fuel loading going on. We had liquid oxygen loading going on, everything but the second stage. And the weather just needed a little bit more time to clear the conditions. We didn't have that time because we had an instantaneous window. And so with that, SpaceX launch director had to call upon the input from weather, had to call a scrub for the day per the safety rules that we have for this flight. So right now the team is undergoing the post-scrub operations on both Dragon as well as Falcon 9, working with the range. No issues being reported right now as we start to go through that sequence. Everything looks good. And Dan, we had a good webcast going here until the very end. So you know, we'll look at it as now we've had another great dry rehearsal. Last Saturday we did a dry one, I should say, and today we've done a wet dress rehearsal. But sorry, we just couldn't get there, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John I. And obviously, we can't control the weather. We came right down to the wire there, hoping we could just squeeze in between those cloud systems to get a launch today, but it wasn't to be. But It doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have another attempt coming up in just 3 days, so we're going to be doing this all over again essentially on Saturday, on the 30th, and that launch attempt is going to be coming at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time, so a little bit earlier in the day. It's going to look largely the same to everything that we saw today, with the crew waking up, going through suit up, making their way to the pad. So we're going to feel a lot of deja vu, I think, on Saturday.
Yep. But still exciting. Safety is always first, so if weather was not there for us today, hopefully Saturday it will be there for us and we will have a safe launch on Saturday.
Yeah, the initial weather report still had us at about, I think, a 40% possibility of violation, so weather a little bit better, but we're still going to be kind of rolling the dice. It is Florida in the spring and summer, so storms are always a possibility. One of the good things, though, the vehicle appeared to be in great health throughout the day, both Dragon and Falcon 9, so we didn't have to scrub for any technical issue. We're going to continue and follow along with Bob and Doug until they're out of that capsule, as again, they had started loading fuel onto the Falcon 9 rocket, so they'll have to wait until all that fuel comes off. They'll disarm the launch escape system, which still stays armed because they're still sitting on a partially loaded rocket, and then once they're able to disarm that launch escape system, the crew arm will swing back out. They'll make their way once again back the way they came, and then it'll be back to crew quarters for Bob and Doug for a few more days. But if you're just now tuning in, wondering why we're not still counting down, we did have a launch scrub today. We were just a little under 17 minutes.
Fuel flow rates are nominal for offload. Expecting about a 40-minute offload time.
So that call out, the LOX, the liquid oxygen fuel pumping out of the first stage of the Falcon 9, everything looking good with that. Expecting about 40 minutes for all that fuel to come off. So again, once that fuel comes off, Bob and Doug will be able to disarm the launch escape system, and that crew access arm will swing back out. They'll be able to make their way back down and then over to crew quarters. So unfortunate scrub today because of weather. That was the one thing we were tracking from the moment we started today. Watching Bob and Doug get suited up for their launch. We did abort today's launch, or scrub today's launch, with a little under 17 minutes to go until our T0 time, which was 4:33. So that's going to move us to our next attempt, which is coming up on Saturday, and that time is going to be 3:22 p.m. Eastern time, so a little bit earlier in the day for Bob and Doug and for everybody else watching around the world. They're still going to have a 19-hour flight to station if that's when we launch, and a lot of the stuff that we saw today is going to look very similar, but we're just going to have to try again, cross our fingers, hope for a little bit better weather the next time.
And again, this goes with every launch. We do track everything all the way down to T0 to make sure that everything is go, making sure that the range is go, weather is go. So this is standard procedure. We always tend to make sure that we have a backup day, launch day, in case we do have scrubs like today. So this is pretty normal and standard. Nothing to be worried about. Again, we do this for the safety of our vehicles, as well as today we had astronauts on our vehicle. So even bigger reason for us to make sure that we have safe weather for them to fly.
And just a reminder for everyone still tuned in, it takes about 40 minutes for all of this propellant to come off of the Falcon 9.
Join me again Saturday. I'll be broadcasting the next launch. Thank you so much for watching. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it.